excited to have sort of as my guest today and sort of a partner as we kick this off, someone who has created her own businesses, been wildly successful, developing Soulcycle and Flywheel into the prominent success stories they are today, particularly in wellness, lifestyle. And what I think is most exciting, and you've got a copy of a book here, is that this is really the first day of a book being released. And so the opportunity to sit back and talk about what that journey has looked like and the part that culture has played in making this such a great success story. Ruth, thanks so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, Ruth Zukerman.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I think we're going to take a seat and kind of get right into this. So Ruth, I love the book. We've read all about it. You're in a business that seems like customer service, customer experience is a priority. For us, that means you've got to talk about culture and the employee experience. How important has culture been in terms of building these great success stories?
I think it's been crucial, actually. I feel that happy employees give you happy customers. And because of that, we've just always made a point of treating our employees like family, pretty much. And it's funny because with Flywheel, one of my co-founders and I are the two that led the business, and employees literally used to joke and call us mommy and daddy. And, you have to watch that, and there obviously have to be boundaries at some point, but for the most part, we just related to them, and we treated them with honor, which I know we're going to touch upon later, and with respect. And if you do that, they want to succeed as much as you do. So it's a win-win.
So how did you see that kind of impacting your customers? I mean, you have a great clientele list that comes in for a particular type of experience. So how does taking care of your employees impact the experience that they get when they walk through the doors, particularly at Flywheel today?
Right. I think if you find employees who are really excited about the business, about what you sell, what your product is, then they are so happy to be part of the business, and then they just want to kind of share the wealth with the customers. And with both Soulcycle and Flywheel, it's such a customer serving business, and it's about making customers feel important too. And so if the employees are feeling important, they'll want the customers to feel the same way.
You use that really cool kind of word, honoring your employees, and it's in the book, and that's it. But what do you mean by that? Because that seems like it is a tough concept for some people to kind of get through. You're honoring employees? What does that mean to you?
It means treating them with respect. It means, as a leader, relating to them and letting them relate to you and listening to them and, allowing them to make mistakes and showing them that they can learn from their mistakes, and just as important, if not more important, commending them for the good work. I hear in other business cultures, I hear so many times employees working so hard and leaders never telling them, never acknowledging it, never telling them, you're doing a great job, because of you, we just got that, whatever it is. And so I can't emphasize that enough.
I love that idea that you kind of pick up on, allowing employees to make mistakes. Any examples where you've allowed that to happen? Because that's a tough one. For business leaders, for managers, we like the idea of, we talk about innovation, creativity, all these great words, but for that to be real, you have to allow your employees to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
I think it's almost a false prophecy in a lot of situations today. So how have you brought that in at Flywheel?
Well, along those lines of allowing employees to make mistakes, it's also really important as a leader to kind of keep your reactions in check to their mistakes. I think a lot of leaders out there, will fly off the handle, will get, immediately angry, and obviously that's going to make the employee feel like that. And you got to keep that in check and make sure that you relay to them that it's okay. And by the way, I'm a leader, I make mistakes all the time.
I think it leads into this whole idea. There's a word empowerment that's used in business today. In American business, everybody's empowered. It's kind of complete bullshit. And I use that word kind of seriously because having someone empowered means you give them control over the work that they do. You're allowing them to make those sort of mistakes. The reality is while everyone will say, hey, you are empowered, the reality is you're empowered to a certain degree, but don't make these decisions, don't do that. And so it becomes this false prophecy. And I think that's really hindered the development and growth of a lot of employees in that we see today. How have your employees grown and developed? How have you sort of taken them to the next level, what you do?
Because I really made a point of cultivating them. Again, almost parental in certain ways, but nurturing them and kind of taking them under my wing and, again, allowing them to make mistakes and letting them learn from them and being right there with them every step of the way. And, as the company grows, it's harder and harder to do that, but then you kind of amass this group of employees with similar values and farm them out to our other regions and let them help with the hiring and recruiting. And, that's what we did. And as a result, every Flywheel studio I would visit, the customers would come up to me and say, oh my God, this is my family. And I created my whole social life here. And again, it's because the employees were happy and they were making the customers feel accepted in my family.
So listen, you've created this awesome situation. It sounds perfect, but so where do you find these people? So you're in a customer-centric business, you've got people that grow and develop. Most companies today struggle with finding and hiring the right people. There's this propensity to just kind of get a warm body in there. You can't really do that. So how do you do? Is there anything that you do that helps get that selection right?
I think first and foremost, when people come to you and want to work for you, you have to really get a sense of why. And, it's always kind of a given that if a prospective employee's first question is, well, what are you going to pay me? That's it. It's not going to work. You want them to be passionate about your business and what you're offering. And with instructors specifically, you have to be able to put your ego aside because instructors are performers to a certain degree, and so there's always a good degree of ego usually involved. But for both Soulcycle and Flywheel, we kind of had to start instructors from the beginning, no matter how much experience they had out there. And so a lot of times we would get instructors who would say, oh, I'm already trained, I've done this already, I don't need training. Okay, that's not going to work because we wanted to train them from the get-go. So kind of through that weeding process, we ended up with people that just really wanted to be there and loved what we did and wanted to kind of share this incredible 45-minute journey that each customer would go through with everyone. That was their motivation, was to gratify the customers, not money. And then obviously when you do a good job, the money comes.
So let's be honest here. How many of them came in and said, "Oh my God, you're Ruth Zukerman. It's like so cool to meet you." I mean, you must get that. You're like this legend with all the instructors. Every instructor wants to kind of, sort of touch. You built this business, particularly in its current state.
It's funny now. I do get it, and it still feels odd to me. But on the flip side, the company's gotten big, and so there is a flip side in that I called the studio recently, and the desk person answered the phone, and I'd left something there. I taught there the day before, and she said, "Who is this?" And I said, "It's Ruth." "I'm sorry, Ruth who?" And I said, "Ruth Zukerman." Still didn't know because the company's gotten so big. And I said, "I'm an instructor." That's all I said. She said, "Okay, I'll look for it." And everybody got a big kick out of that. And then when I met her, it was quite entertaining. But but people do come to me and say, "Wow," and I'm a pretty humble person, so I never take it for granted.
So you touched on something, getting bigger, and I think this is what a lot of companies, emerging companies, have to sort of deal with. In a day-to-day situation, you get to touch a lot of people, the instructors. Now you're getting big. What are some of the challenges that you see coming, or you've had to deal with the fact that you don't get to touch everybody? Probably you don't get to hire every instructor now. So what are some of the growing pains? Yes. But what do you see coming down the track as being your challenge?
So I kind of touched on it earlier, but again, I feel like it's about what's so important is establishing this foundation and establishing a great initial group. And then they will be in charge of recruiting the next level of people, and as the company grows, the senior teams grow, and then you feel comfortable kind of farming them out to the other regions and hiring the right people. But I'm curious about you, Shane, just because you've had so many large corporations that you've worked with, and larger than Flywheel and Soulcycle. So how do you do it?
So, and again, there's this whole culture revolution, I think, going on right now. And when we go into organizations, and it's interesting, we're working with MGM Resorts, United right now, Foot Locker we did something with. And I think in every situation, you kind of go back to basics. When companies get too large, too big, without having some of these basic steps in place, they can find themselves in trouble. You know, I use our friends at Uber as a great example. But here's the first kind of piece. It comes back to values. You have to, in today's situation, make sure that your company is well-grounded in values, which means it knows what it believes in. It knows how it's going to act and interact. And it's almost like these rules of the sandbox. The rules of the sandbox are very important. If you have young kids, or you used to have young kids, you'll kind of get this. You're at the playground, you put your kids in the sandbox, they're playing with other kids, it's awesome. And everyone's happy. Then all of a sudden another kid turns up and it's chaos. This kid starts throwing the toys everywhere, sand in the face, it's like this complete disaster. And as a parent, you get really annoyed. You're like, damn, they didn't teach their kid the rules of the sandbox. Well, honestly, most organizations are like that today. And I think it's funny because we've heard so much about millennials. And again, I love to see we've got the millennials here, but really it's like a bunch of baby boomers complaining about millennials for year after year. And what are they complaining about? They're complaining about the fact that millennials have come in and created their own set of rules. The problem being is that no one, when they walked into the company, says, this is the rules of our sandbox. And the millennials walked in and said, wait, there's no rules, I'm going to create my own. And that's where the chaos has come. The angst has come because all of a sudden, old middle-aged white guys like me are going like, wait up, you can't do that so quick and so fast and so good. You have to do it 1,000 steps along the way, which is complete BS. They look at us like, well, wait up, this is our opportunity to redefine the sandbox. So what I always say for emerging companies, you know, we work with a lot of startups, is you've got to have those rules in place. Those values have to be there. And the other piece that's important is the values can evolve, and particularly the definition of those values. So that's important. I think you touched on selection, how important that is. I think you got to get the right people in there. But then it's like, make sure you do something with them. We talked, I was very fortunate with Ritz-Carlton, Horst Schulze, who's sort of one of the legends of hospitality. He sort of would always remind us that an employee's first day on the job was the most important day of their job. And what it did is it set priorities in place. And so what happens many times is you hire these awesome employees, they start up on their first day, and no one's taking care of them. And so if the first day is about priorities, what happens? You turn up the first day, you fill out a bunch of paperwork. Well, guess what? The employee thinks, well, paperwork must be important. They turn up the first day, and all they hear is about all the rules. Well, guess what? That's what they think they should follow, is all the rules. So making sure that the first day is an amazing experience, make sure that they are emotionally connected to the priorities, but then from there on you go into onboarding and make sure you're teaching them and setting them up for success sort of down the track. And then I think the final piece, and this is something I want to bring back to you, is leadership. Too often in most organizations there's an emphasis on developing managers, people that run the business, people that control the business, and basically get the bottom line. And listen, bottom line numbers are important, but you got to have balance. You've got to have and teach those managers how to work with people and through people, not piss them off every 2 seconds. Because that's literally the situation that happens. So it's interesting, you hear, and again, the media that's here, you hear a lot these days about managers, senior executives, owners, getting into the media because they don't create respectful, safe, caring environments for their employees. And so this is sort of something that comes back to you because you're kind of the creative, you call yourself sort of the mom of the group. That has a certain connotation of what leadership is about. So why do you think so many managers or companies are getting in trouble or having problems these days with their senior managers? What's going wrong out there?
You know, I recently observed a business that shall remain nameless. And
we can pretty much there's no way it'll get out at all. I'm sure.
I can't. But I got acquainted with the particular leader of this business and saw the employee culture that he had created. And this was someone who, you know, I spoke about ego before, extremely insecure, weak ego, and I see that a lot. And a leader like that is just going to be concerned with kind of a power trip. And they never do a good job leading. All I saw was this culture created where whenever a mistake was made, his first thought was, who can I throw under the bus? Who can I blame for this? And as a result, he created a culture where employees were walking on eggshells, terrified about making a mistake, and at the end of the day, miserable working there. And so I went quite the opposite way in, again, nurturing them, cultivating them, being available to listen to them, hearing what they were experiencing and helping them in a really positive, authentic way. And authenticity is a big word for me. It kind of runs throughout my book, and I can't overestimate the importance of authenticity. Being real, that's what people relate to. You want to be relatable, and that's how you make people feel comfortable.
So you said something really important. Companies that throw their employees under the bus. Again, I can't say, in the last few years, let's do Wells Fargo. Again, let's get that and put it out there. Look what happened to Wells Fargo. They created all the fake bank accounts. So the immediate reaction of the organization was fire 5,500 employees because they were the ones to blame. Then they take the executive, give them a nice $100,000 sort of cash out to go away, and instead a sort of payment. But the fact is that you have an organization that blamed their employees for the culture that was created. The senior executives weren't taking that ownership. So what's happened? I think every other month we hear a new Wells Fargo scandal because the employees keep leaking and kind of saying, it's a bit of an FU, because the whole basis is you have to take care of your employees. And we have to get into this sort of understanding that when we throw our employees under the bus, remember this, I believe customers are much more forgiving than your employees will be. And let's face it, Wells Fargo didn't really have much of a glitch. They've had to pay out some huge fines, but their customers are still banking with them. The reality is, though, the employees and how they feel is, again, years behind, and it continues to be so because no one's actually taking blame and saying, you know what, it was our responsibility for this culture and for the scandal that came out. And so I think that's really important when it comes to leadership, is being honest and saying, listen, we do make mistakes. You make mistakes, you sort of ever happen.
All the time.
And I think that's part of what leadership is about. It's there, but I still think there's a lack of leadership. And again, you talked about authenticity. Why do so many managers have trouble being authentic or being themselves or being transparent?
I really don't know, and it's really a shame because people can't relate to you if you're not authentic. It's just, you're sitting there frustrated, like what's really happening inside there. And it's not interesting. It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but I was at the Global Citizens event over the weekend. I don't know if anyone was there. And Cardi B was performing. And, Cardi B has this reputation, she's badass gangsta. But she got up there, and halfway through her performance, she said to this crowd of 60,000 people, she admitted that she was really nervous and she felt intimidated. And I thought, wow. Cardi B is nervous and she feels intimidated. I immediately related to her. And, ordinarily would never think someone like that with the reputation and her branding would ever, admit that. But that's what we relate to, and it's the same thing in business with employees and leaders.
But what's interesting is I think how that situation came up is that in most corporations, most businesses today, the people that get promoted are the best ones at tasks. We don't actually look and go, all right, you're going to get promoted because we think you're going to be really good with people.
Yes.
And so you get people that are really task-driven, task-orientated. They come up through the systems. I mean, we work with organizations today with managers, senior executives that quite honestly hate people. And literally, they would admit that it's like, we're not a people person at all, but they've been put in a position where they are a leader of people. So that conflict is such a challenge, and I think it's what a lot of organizations need to think about and deal with today. You need someone that has that people orientation. And we talk about this a lot. You've got to have balance. You still need to hit your bottom line numbers. But you've got to pull back and make sure that there's a leadership element where you're taking care of your people. And I think that's where a lot of managers sort of fail, is that they are so driven. And listen, we get Wall Street. We've got owners that want to make hit your bottom line. There's a lot of pressure these days to get numbers. And I think what happens is that if the numbers is the only focus for an organization, you can quickly lose that culture. So, you get challenged by that as you start to grow and investors want returns, and all of a sudden it's like it's more about hitting numbers than it is about taking care of people. And yet I would argue if you don't take care of people, those numbers are going to suffer. Whether it's through your customers, whether it's through productivity, that I'm not that interested in working for you right now, or the fact that your best people will leave. That's bottom line numbers. And that's why, really, when you talk about the whole idea of business and culture, culture is no longer this HR thing. It's a business thing.
Absolutely.
So, and again, as we start to kind of wrap this, in thinking about culture, often in a lot of organizations that we see, culture is an HR thing. It's something that is a responsibility of one or two people. Obviously, what you're talking about, you take culture very, very seriously. How do we shift that? How do you make it that it's the responsibility of everyone in the organization? Because it is a collective mindset, it's a collective attitude. It can't be just down to an HR person or group. How do you make it so collaborative that everybody's involved?
As I said before, I think so much of it is about treating every employee equally and valuing them and valuing all of them. And so as a result, what happens is they then value each other. Before, when we were talking about the throwing employees under the bus culture, when you do that, everyone's paranoid, nobody trusts each other, people are stabbing each other in the back. You completely eliminate that when you value everybody equally.
Very cool. Well, listen, there's lots of great advice, and I think the piece is that as organizations grow, as you continue to do that, culture needs to be the responsibility of everyone. And again, if you only have it in your HR division or put it to an HR person, it will fall over. We work with organizations right now where we're seeing that managers kind of bring up the idea of culture and they say, oh yeah, HR will deal with it. They'll deal with recognition. They deal with the disciplinary action. They deal with all the elements and all the mechanisms that really does create culture. And that's a problem that you see in a lot of organizations. It's like, well, culture is the responsibility of someone else. Culture is about the environment. It's about safe, respect, it's about caring, it's about all the things that we're hearing in the news each and every day. And the reason that we're hearing about it every day is that every manager, executives thinks they've got someone taking care of it. The bottom line is that for managers, executives, and owners today, you have to make culture the main thing. It's a business thing. It's everything that you should be focused on. And I can just say that it's a real pleasure to be able to have you for someone that has really made culture such a main thing and to see the success of the business. I thank you for that, and I think it's really, really cool to be able to talk to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Ruth Zukerman.
Thank you.